Hey, what's up everybody? It's Lids, and we're back for some more Gwent, and today we're playing more of the Double Down seasonal event, which is an alternate game mode in which every card in our deck gets duplicated, and then whenever we play a unit, we will also play a random unit from our deck with the same provision cost. Today we're playing a deck that is using more of the new cards and combining that with a classic Double Down deck. So let's go take a look. Alright, so today we'll be playing a Syndicate Jackpot deck that is built around a combination of the new Chronicles expansion cards and also a Double Down staple. So let's start with the new cards. Those are, first and foremost, the legendary Sigi, Reuven, Mastermind, which is basically a super tutor, and when we play him, we'll have the choice of either selecting Collusion, if we have in our deck, and we do, or a random one from each of the different gangs. And then if we'd like to, we can pay a pretty expensive tribute to play two of the cards that we see there, and so that is a very rare opportunity to play two different cards with this tutor. I mean, three if you're including Sigi himself. So that is a lot of tempo, and because he is our only 12 provision unit, when you play him, you are also getting another copy of him immediately thereafter. So that is ridiculous how many cards you can play in one turn. Now that starts off expensive, however, for each unique gang that we control, we actually reduce that tribute cost by 2. So if you control every single gang, that actually means that the tribute is free, which is pretty sweet given how powerful it is. So Blind Eyes, Crown Splitters, Cut-Ups, Firesworn, Salamander, and Tidecloaks. Those are all of them. Unfortunately, for whatever reason, Witch Hunters do not count. Then let's go for more of the new cards, and that would mean next up would be the epic Bart, and so when we play him, every time we play a unit with a unique gang category, or one that we don't yet control, like for example, if we have Bart on the board, for the first Blind Eye that we play, we gain 1 coin. And then next time we play our next new gang, like we play a Crown Splitter, then we gain 2 coins, because we now control 2 different gangs, so on and so forth. The more that you control, the more coins you get with Bart, and because we can get 2 Barts on the board in this event, that means we can generate a lot of coins and score a lot of points with Jackpot. So that's pretty awesome, and means you generally want to play him first as, of course, a coin generator, and once you max out your coins, a point scorer as well. Then, on top of that, we have what is probably not going to be as impactful in this event, but we can, of course, still use it. Pulling the Strings, which is the common, and this is also based on how many of the unique gangs we control. And so if we control very few of them, it's basically just pure profit 6. Whereas if we control all of those unique gangs, then we can seize one of our opponent's units that is 6 or less power. So basically, the more gangs we control, the more powerful of a unit we can seize. The fewer gangs we control, the more profit we generate. So generally speaking, early in the round, it's profit. Later in the round, it's seizing a more powerful unit. You do it somewhere in between, it's going to be somewhere in between. But given how when we play a special card, we only play 1 special card, and when we play a unit, we play 2 units. Probably not going to be as much of a point of emphasis in this event specifically, but we do have one of these in our deck. But the bigger one to consider, at least relative to that right there, is the new rare Little Bird, which is, once again, another card that benefits from controlling a bunch of different types of gangs. So in this case, we will infuse Little Bird with one of the gang categories from a card in our deck, so you can choose whichever one you'd like. So that means generally, if you don't have one on the board, or you have one unit that's incredibly weak that's probably about to get destroyed, choose that to infuse that gang onto Little Bird. And then with the fee ability, you can spend 2 coins to boost a unit based on how many of those gang categories you control. So if you only control that one from the status that you infused on Little Bird, then that's not going to be a huge deal. However, if you have all of those gangs, or almost all those gangs, that's 5 or 6 points for just 2 coins, which is incredible value, and I mean, that's why it's a cooldown one. You can't use it non-stop, although if you do 2 Little Birds, then you can at least use 2 of them per turn. That adds up very quickly, especially near the end of the round when you have all those gangs under your control. So those are all the new cards, and the general theme, of course, being that the more unique gangs that you control, the more powerful they become. And that means we have a lot of unique gangs in this deck. So in particular, that means using things that, such as Bloody Good Friends, count as 2 different gangs, Crown Splitters and Cut-Ups in one unit, might not usually be all that amazing, but because they are so efficient with putting as many gangs on the board as you can, as quickly as you can, they are really helpful for powering up those new cards. We also have Mutants Maker, which is the only other card outside of a very expensive legendary that we don't have in our deck that counts as 2 different unique gangs, Firesworn and Salamander in this case. So we actually don't have Devotion, so we will end up destroying one of our units when we play this. In some cases, though, in this event, that can actually be a good thing. If, for example, your opponent is flooding your side of the board with spies, which is pretty common with Nilfgaard, so that's one thing to bear in mind. You also tend to run it out of space in a long round, even if your opponent isn't playing a bunch of spies on your side of the board, so it can still be useful in that way. And for the really really advanced plays, if you only have one unit from a specific gang, you can deliberately destroy that one unit, and then on your next turn, play a different unit that also is from that same gang, and in doing so, re-trigger the last round of the profit on Bart, because otherwise, once you already control all the gangs, he's basically maxed out on his coin generation. So that's difficult to pull off, but it is technically possible and could be a way to get even more value out of Mutants Maker. Again, a card that otherwise wouldn't be all that impressive, but can be very useful for both getting all those gangs and technically replaying one of the gangs if you want to maximize Bart's value. Then outside of that, some high value bronzes like Shady Vendor, and really love in this event the Sly Seductress, because since our opponent is generally playing at least 2 cards per turn, that makes Sly Seductress potentially twice as powerful as she would usually be. So she can be a very useful engine. We also have a nice combination for consistency's sake, Doadrick, which every turn allows us to swap a card from our hand with a card in our deck. That is especially useful when combined with Snowdrop, because she's also an 8 provision cost card, so generally speaking, when you play one of them, you're going to get the other one. Bart is also an 8, so you might end up getting him, but whenever you draw a card, Snowdrop gets boosted. That means combining her with Doadrick, especially if you have multiple Snowdrops and multiple Doadricks, adds up really quickly as powerful boosting engines, and also ways to make your hand as good as possible for the rest of the round. But that is not all. Yes, sure, that's generally what we're looking to do in round 1, but the big thing in round 3 is that we are bringing back a classic combo. Let's start off with the small stuff. Marlene might not seem like a big deal, but that Veil is actually extremely useful, not only on herself, but to give one of our other units Veil is useful as well, because then, near the end of round 3, we can use that to give Veil to Roland, and you might see where this is going, because he generates coins every time we poison a unit. And with Jackpot, that means if we poison a whole bunch of units, we could overprofit and turn Roland into a really big point-scoring card. And that is particularly the case when we finish with Salamander, which is our only 9 provision cost unit, which means when we play it, we will be guaranteed to play the other one out from our deck. So on our last turn, you go double Salamander, use the tribute ability both times, and in doing so, destroy every single unit on the board that does not have Veil. That's why having Veil on our cards is pretty useful. Sure, you can technically win around 0 to 1 if that last Salamander is the only card remaining, but in order to give yourself a little bit more margin for error, having Marlene on the board with the Veil, I mean, that's a 6-point unit for each Marlene, that's nice, but putting the Veil on Roland in particular allows him to stay on the board and generate a ton of coins from all the poisons that Salamander deals out, and then in doing so, give you a ton of boosts when you inevitably overprofit. So that is basically an automatic win in round 3 if you have last say, if you have enough coins to at least get the initial Salamander off by the time you get the second one, assuming you still have Roland on the board, and that should be pretty much guaranteed that you're going to get that second one with enough coins. If Roland sticks, obviously he's worth a lot more points when you do get the Veil on him, and there is some concern if your opponent either floods your side of the board or starts to put up a lot of Veil on their side. But if you can keep Roland on the board and give him Veil, not only are you removing everything with Salamander, but Roland can be worth on the order of 100, possibly even 200 points. So that's the name of the game. We have a bunch of cards that benefit from playing a ton of different types of gangs, and generally you're going to focus a little bit more on that in round 1, because that way you can establish round control. Oh, and speaking of round control, Ciri Dash, a way to, since she's our only 10 provision cost unit, get 2 of her on the board and possibly get some card advantage and establish round control. Even if you didn't win round 1, technically by getting 2 cards out of her, you might still be able to get back to having last say in round 3, which is pretty important because you want Salamander to be the last thing that gets played in the entire game. But yes, so that's round 1, is get more aggressive with scoring your points. Round 3 is really just all about trying to pull off Marlene plus Roland plus Salamander combo. So let's go see it in action. Alright, so going up against Scoia'tael here, and they'll go first. And, okay, we have 2 Snowdrops actually. That's great early on in the round for generating a bunch of points. Probably don't need all of these 4 provision cost units, so let's get rid of some of them. All right, and they go Percival first. Now that, of course, presumably means they're going all in on Harmony here. So that is worth a lot of points in the long round. Let's start with Sly Seductress, because that is one of our best engines. And Bloody Good Friends. I mean, that can help us get a bunch of gangs on the board quickly, but not as great in terms of direct point scoring power. And yeah, here is more Harmony, as we might have expected. And the Ranger can poison, so that might threaten a little bit on the Seductress. Now we can go with Snowdrop, because we can immediately use her order ability in this case, and with her, we'll get Bart. Okay, so that's good for some early coin generation. Use Snowdrop. And Marlene is good for round 3. Let's get rid of some of our other weaker bronzes. Alright, Chameleon. So more harmony set up here. Alright, and we could go with our other Snowdrop. That is technically our best next play for maximizing our point total, but I'm hesitating a little bit here because I'm not sure if we can pull off a round 1 win against Harmony, since they have a lot of point scoring potential, and it's going to take a lot to catch them. So Cat Witcher will trigger those harmonies, of course, and they'll get more on the board here as well. And now, yeah, let's go with the Snowdrop. I think, you know, we want to at least establish round control here so that we can get last say with our Salamander in round 3, and since we get Doadrick, that makes both of our Snowdrops considerably more powerful here. They are truly engines at this stage. And we can fine-tune our hand further. And getting that Sigi could be a really big deal, because that gives us a lot of potential for tons of tempo. But speaking of which, they go Saskia. That is, of course, a very big Harmony card. And they'll go the damaging route, and then another Saskia. And then also damage here. Chameleon once again, and they have enough Harmony on the board now that this is getting quite powerful, as we expected it might be. But let's use Doadrick. And we do have a lot of different gangs on the board at this stage, so Little Bird is pretty effective. So let's use that. And pick a gang category based on ones that we don't yet have, and I don't think we had Salamandra. And yeah, we'll use this. Now, obviously, the more gangs we control, the more valuable that fee ability becomes. So it's a 5-point boost at this stage, and that makes it a little bit harder for them to remove Doadrick. More Chameleon. Alright, and oh, Weeping Willow. Okay, we were wondering if they were going to have enough poison to remove that Seductress, and there it is. The second round of poison to get rid of her. Okay, so they are, of course, starting to pull away a bit here, but I think it is still possible for us to catch them. So we'll use our Mutants Maker and get rid of one of these Bloody Good Friends, since we don't really need 2 of them. And Little Bird, at this point, should be still quite valuable to us. Doadrick. It's a little late for another Doadrick, but it's also pretty late for Ciri, so I guess we'll go with Doadrick here. Trained Hawk, more Harmony. Do they really not have a beast yet? No, apparently not, because it boosted all their Harmony cards. Second Hawk, of course, won't do that, so it's not as impactful. But that Chameleon, with basically a full board of Harmony engines, is kind of terrifying. Because you see how many points they can put up here. But let's stick with it, because I think we can still pull this off. If we use Doadrick now, we get Bart, which a late Bart is definitely not ideal at this stage. And we're basically just using Doadrick now to power up our Snowdrops. Unlikely to see anything that's improvement, and in fact, when we already have Sigi, he's our only 12 provision cost unit, so we do not want to draw to the other one. Oh, and I forgot Little Bird. That's not good. But, okay, so they do pass, and it's about a 50-point lead here. So this is all basically a matter of how many points can Sigi score here. So this will be a very interesting test. So again, basically just dumping these to power up Snowdrop, but with Sigi, we have a ton of gangs on the board. So that means the tribute might even be free here. And so plenty of options for us to use. And that means that Collusion is powerful, but because we do control a Firesworn unit, this is actually a little scary, because it basically just filled both of our rows. So that's not ideal. We can still fit our second Sigi, and we can still pay the tribute if we'd like, because it's basically free. And this Collusion we can still get some value out of, because we don't need board space for that, but the second unit we get is not going to have room. So we use Little Bird, And looks like we need Jackpot to get just enough points here to catch them. And even after that Witcher damage, we can still pull off a round 1 win against Harmony. Now that's saying something. Alright, so now this doesn't matter too much anymore because we do have our Roland, we have a way to get the Salamander, and we also have Marlene. Those are the key cards we're looking for in round 3, so we can just drive past here. We did play one more card than our opponent in round 1, so not a huge deal anymore. They'll just use this to get some throwaways on the board, and we don't mind if they take the round 2 win. Okay, and so, I mean, we can try to swap out some of these other cards, see if we get anything decent. Unfortunately, we did get our second Marlene. She is our only 6 provision cost unit, so we would have automatically gotten that other one out from our deck anyway, so that is a bit of a brick there. But Francesca, okay, now that's actually concerning, because we have Last Say. That's really important for us, so we can finish with the Salamander. We are concerned about getting enough coins to at least initially have enough to use that first tribute ability on the initial Salamander. But then if they have a bunch of Veil, especially if they put Veil on some of their more powerful cards, then that card will survive even after the Salamander poisoning. So that Francesca, for that reason, is a concern. But anything other than that, we're not too worried about here. So they can load up on all the Harmony they'd like. As long as none of those cards gain Veil, we should still be fine. So these are basically just throwaway cards here. Don't really care about them, but of course, we do want to make sure we have enough to use that initial Salamander tribute ability, as I was saying, and that is expensive at 9 coins. Yeah, and so with their scenario, they're just trying to basically do something very similar to what they did in round 1 and build around the Harmony, but that's not going to be all that effective, because all those cards are going to get removed by the Salamander, unless they find a way to put Veil on them. Some more throwaways here. And, you know, getting a second Seductress is not bad from a point-scoring potential standpoint, but because those are also going to get destroyed by the Salamander, that's not really a huge deal, and that's also why I'm not using the Fee ability on the little bird either at the moment. But no Veil from our opponent, so not worried about those cards. Still just using throwaways here. And we're going to finish with Marlene, then Roland, and then lastly Salamander. We're going to use Marlene. Obviously, she has Veil herself, so she will survive, and that is, at least the 2 of them collectively, worth more than that Francesca, so that is good. But giving the Veil with those Marlene order abilities onto Roland, that's where we get the serious point potential, and then obviously the huge finisher to remove everything on their side with the Salamanders. So it doesn't matter if they have almost a 100-point lead here. We do want these Marlenes to survive, though. Again, she is our only 6th provision cost unit in our deck, so normally you'd want to have just one in your hand and you'd automatically get the other one out from your deck when you play it. Not the case here, though. Unfortunately, we did get both of them in our hand. Not the end of the world, just means it's going to be a little bit slower, and it's going to slightly limit the number of units we have in this round, but because we should still have all the pieces we need to pull off the Salamander combo, shouldn't be a big problem. And it's not as if they are doing anything to answer Marlene here, so that's also a good sign. So we get the other one out now. And that means as soon as we get Roland down, we can immediately give him the Veil. And they are completely out of board space here, so they may not be able to do anything else. Largely a matter of, do they have any specials remaining here? Maybe not. If it's just units, then they can't use those. So now we break out Roland, and he is our only 7 provision cost unit, which means we're guaranteed to get the other one out from our deck here as well. Use those Marlene orders to give him Veil. And that's important because he gives us coins whenever we poison a unit, and since we're about to poison a ton of units, that will give us enough coins to sustain both Salamander tributes and also overprofit, giving us tons of points. So here's Oneiro into Salamander, pay the tribute, poison everyone. Other Salamander, only other 9 provision cost units, so guaranteed to get it. Tribute here, poison everyone. If you don't have Veil, you're getting destroyed. And that's why Veil was so important, and we'll hold on for what is just about the ideal Salamander win. Alright, so going up against Nilfgaard here, and we'll go first. And we've both Marlenes in our hand. We don't want that because that is our only 6 provision cost unit. Do like an early Snowdrop, but outside of that, we have a lot of our weaker 4 provision cost cards and a couple of Tide Cloaks, so let's get rid of one of those. That could be a Salamander Tutor, so I do like that. Maybe get rid of more of our 4 provision cost units. And let's start with the Sly Seductress, because that can be a strong early engine for us, and to get another one out there as well is definitely nice, because that activates their bonded ability. Except as soon as I say that, one of them is going away. But we get Bart out, which is actually not bad. Then Matza. So we'll both be drawing a card. Alright, normally I would go Snowdrop here on our second turn, but since we just drew a card, that's not really something we're looking to do just yet. Instead, we'll get Little Bird out here and just add a gang category that we don't yet control and get another Little Bird out from our deck and do the same thing here. Probably still a little early to actually use those fee abilities, though, because we don't have that much in the way of gangs on the board, so just use one of them and not the other. Duchess's Informants. Okay, I mean, these... Oh, I suppose. Sly Seductress. I was going to say, the Little Bird's not very helpful for them, so... Yeah, the Seductress is not bad, and are they about to... Yeah, they're about to do exactly what we wanted to do. Have 2 Seductresses on the board, so that kind of stinks. And I am tempted to get rid of those Duchess's Informants, but let's get Snowdrop down here first. Because she can be an engine for us when we have Doadrick on the board as well. And don't really need that. Bare-Knuckle Brawler with Snowdrop. Collusion is not bad, but I think we'll try to tutor that in with, if we can, Sigi later on. And at this point, again, not the most valuable fee abilities here on the Little Birds, but we'll at least get some of our more important engines boosted up a bit and make it harder for them to remove those cards. Because, well, one of those Little Birds is going away now. Alright, and perhaps at this stage, we do start to get more of those gangs on the board to make the Little Bird abilities more effective, and here is another Seductress for us. So why don't we, in that case, use Doadrick? Still not a huge fan of the Brawler, but use this Little Bird ability to boost up a Seductress, probably, to get that more out of removal range. They'll go Leader ability. And now Dandelion. Okay, I mean, it's not worth that many points, and it does help our Seductresses out, especially if you go double Dandelion. So we'll take it. And now, okay, they get a little bit of Assimilate, and the Purification. Okay, to get rid of one of the gang categories on our Little Bird, which is a little unfortunate. Doadrick to get, oh, well, another Doadrick. I mean, that works. I do like the Mutants Makers just to get rid of some of these spies they're flooding us with, but we already have several. And definitely like having more of this Doadrick plus Snowdrop synergy stuff happening. Ciri is definitely nice. I guess we can get rid of a Mutants Maker. Again, I do like them, especially against Nilfgaard, but then again, oh boy, we have some very nice pickups here. Don't need the Salamander Tutor when we have the Salamander, though, and there is Sigi. Alright, it's Cantarella. Okay, so it's looking like this is turning more into, well, you know, spy spamming deck that, unfortunately, it seems as though even after the bug has gotten fixed, people have been pretty committed to using them. They are, from what I've seen, pretty bad most of the time, but they don't score many points. They do flood our side of the board, so definitely a decent time for Mutants Makers. We do already have one of them, though. So let's get rid of Bloody Good Friends. We already have one of those, and this is probably a good time to use Mutants Maker and get rid of one of those Cantarellas. And, okay, wouldn't have been that opposed to getting another Mutants Maker out from our deck to remove the other Cantarella, but now Little Bird, I suppose, just use it to, once again, keep our cards out of removal range. And the world's most predictable coup on Cantarella. And, okay, I mean, they steal a Sigi. Although, that kind of stinks, because we, of course, have one of the Sigis in our hand. We would have liked to have gotten the other one out when we played our initial Sigi. They can't really use him, because they don't have any gang categories at all in their deck, so he's just a 4-point body. Then Tourney Joust for a boost on that Sigi. All right, and at this point, I think our lead is big enough. We can probably pass here. And they'll pass as well, so in that case, we'll take the round 1 win. And so this hand is not bad. I mean, technically speaking, we should make sure that we have a way to get Roland, but we'll proceed here. And we did, of course, win round 1. And so we don't need to play here. We did establish round control as well, so we could just use these as throwaways, but we'll see what they do here and potentially push a little bit in round 2, and at the very least, get some coin generation going. Okay, now this is just silly, because these cards they're creating copies of are worth basically nothing to them. So that's kind of odd. Again, well, I mean, it's very clear what they're trying to do. They're just trying to flood our board here. But the question is, at what cost? I mean, we can remove some of them with Mutants Maker, as we were saying before. And it can start to backfire if they are too committed to putting spies on our side of the board. That's to a certain extent what happened in round 1, right? They tried to flood our side of the board. It didn't really matter. It just meant that they weren't scoring as many points as they could have otherwise scored, and we pretty easily outscored them. So maybe we can push a little bit further here in round 2 and still put some pressure on them. I'd like to play Ciri to get the card draw going, but we know they played a coup, and especially when they have Furcart on the board, not about to play Ciri when they could potentially use coup on her and create some Ciris on their side of the board. So let's wait before we do that and just stall a little bit here. Lead them out, I suppose, with bloody good friends. And because we have last say, we don't need to play Ciri. We don't need to be pushing in round 2 at all. But there is coup. Okay, so could be considerably safer now to play Ciri. Yeah, worst case scenario is they find a way to get Ciris on their side of the board. They suddenly get card advantage and last say, and that would be terrible. But they also got rid of Furcart. So, alright, I mean, I suppose that means it is definitely much safer to play Ciri now. So, again, this is kind of just a nice luxury to have. We technically don't need the series here, but why not? Because it should be much safer at this stage. Stefan, I assume that means they're going to try to remove Ciri with pure damage. Now, how much do they have? It will be double Stefan, it looks like. But how many of these aces do they have up their sleeves? Look like it's probably only going to be enough to remove one of the series. They don't even try to hit the second one. Okay, so in that case, I think what we do here is we might as well go with Little Bird. And we don't have that many gangs on the board right now, but, oh, well, I mean, okay. Infuse with one of the ones we're missing and then get it. But then if we boost up Ciri, now we actually have all 6 for what it's worth, so that should make Ciri much more difficult for them to remove, at least when it comes to using damage to do so. Joachim, okay, I mean, that's a decent point slam. And Defender is what's going to come out on their side with it. Joachim again. Battle preparation. And then a very big slave infantry. It does seem like they have a lot of those for some reason. Maybe they're trying to be a spy spammer and then also be an anti-spy spammer as well, which is just really odd. We can use Sigi here because we basically have all gangs on the board, so this is free. And it's only one Sigi. I suppose we'll remove... They even play a spy? Yeah, we can remove one of the spies they put on our side of the board. And then Collusion is a decent point slam because we have all the gangs under our control. And that means Little Bird should be worth a lot as well. Technically speaking, Sigi was the one way we could have guaranteed that we could get Roland. So if we were trying to use our Salamander combo in round 2 here, that was perhaps our best way to make it happen. But I think we just pass here, because it's not a huge lead, but we're about to draw into that other card. And so we're going to have even more card advantage going into round 3. And we already had everything we needed, right? We had last say, we had most of the pieces for the Salamander combo. So it's mostly just a question of, can they find a way to catch us? And, well, the thing is, they made a point of spamming spies early rather than focusing on putting up points, and it came back to bite them. As it turns out, playing competitively instead of just trying to bully your opponent is better. So there's a look at a Syndicate Salamander deck for the new Double Down seasonal event. If you liked the video, then make sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and leave a comment down below to let me know which other cards, archetypes, and factions you'd like us to experiment with next. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you next time.